In my last video, I shared the moment I believe I became self-aware. It was at 4 years old in a sandbox when I first realized I existed in this reality. It got me thinking, are there spiritual or philosophical traditions that suggest we might take over our avatars, our body minds after they're already established? I've always been curious about consciousness, especially after psychedelics opened the door to non-duality for me. So let's explore some perspectives on this idea from ancient traditions to modern thinkers. First, let's set the stage. When I say avatar, I mean this body-mind I experience reality through. At 4 years old, I suddenly became aware of myself as a me, with a home, a mother, a life. Before that, I have no memories, even though I was functional. I've jokingly called this my NPC phase, like a non-player character in a game, operating on autopilot. But did my consciousness fully enter this avatar at that point, or was it always there? Let's talk about what different traditions say. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a fascinating idea in the Tibetan Book of the Dead about the Bardo, the transitional states between death and rebirth. When a consciousness reincarnates, it chooses a new body, often at conception, based on karma. But some teachings suggest that the consciousness doesn't fully settle into the body right away. It might take years for it to fully integrate, often around the time a child develops self-awareness, around 3 or 4 years old, exactly when my sandbox moment happened. Before that, the body operates on basic instincts and conditioning, kind of like an NPC, while the deeper consciousness isn't fully engaged with the ego. So from this view, my sandbox moment might have been when my consciousness fully anchored into this life. Rudolf Steiner, the founder of anthroposophy, has a similar perspective. He believed that human development involves the gradual integration of spiritual aspects into the physical body. Around age 3, the etheric body, our life forces, fully integrates, and around age 7, the astral body, our consciousness and emotions, becomes more active. But Steiner said that the sense of I, the individual self, often emerges between 3 and 4, which matches my experience. Before that, children are in a dreamlike state, more connected to the spiritual world with less self-awareness. Steiner might say my sandbox moment was when my higher consciousness fully took over my avatar, shifting me from an instinctual state to a self-aware one. Now let's look at a more modern perspective. Tom Campbell, who I've mentioned before, while I find his simulation theory intriguing, though a bit dualistic compared to non-dual teachers like Rupert Spira. Campbell's My Big Toe, that's for theory of everything, suggests reality is a virtual simulation, and consciousness logs into avatars to experience it. He doesn't specify an exact age, but he implies that consciousness might not fully engage until the brain develops enough to support self-awareness, around age 4. Before that, the avatar might run on basic programming, genetics, environment, like an NPC. So my sandbox moment could be logged in, becoming a player in the simulation. Even science has something to say here. Development psychologists like Jean Piaget note that self-awareness typically emerges around 3 to 4 years old, during the pre-operational stage when kids start symbolic thinking and language. Neuroscientists like Antonio Damasio say this is when the brain develops a core self, as the default mode network, which I've learned gets disrupted by psilocybin, starts forming a narrative of me. Before that, a child operates on a proto-self, driven by instincts, which fits my NPC idea. But let's bring it back to non-duality, because that's where I resonate most. Rupert Spira would probably say there's no entering the avatar at all. Consciousness is the only reality, and the avatar is just a projection on the screen of awareness. My sandbox moment wasn't consciousness logging in. It was the moment my mind started identifying with the body-mind, a separate me. Before that, consciousness was still there, but the ego hadn't formed to create a narrative. So in a way, all these perspectives point to the same truth. My sandbox moment marks the beginning of the illusion of a separate self, whether I call it logging in, settling in, or waking up in the dream. It's mind-boggling to think about, isn't it? Whether it's ancient wisdom, modern simulation theory, or science, There's this idea that our consciousness might fully engage with our avatar later than we think. For me, that moment in the sandbox was the start of my story in this reality, but also the start of the illusion I'm now learning to see through. What do you think? Have you ever felt like you woke up in your life at a certain point? Thanks for joining me on this exploration, and I'll see you in my next video.